What's up, everybody? Furin here, and today we have the third update to our Lora carried series. We're going to be going over basically my approach to the new RTA season. Remember, the goal on this account is we're trying to take an account with really, really good LDs that had previously a C2 best finish. We got C3 in the most recent season, seeing if we can get this season to Guardian. So I know that we had the new Punisher ranks. The goal is still going to remain the same. We'll see how close or how far we get to it. And so with the season beginning, we did a full rerun of the account. So I thought it'd be interesting both to kind of look back on this video later and go through some of these runes and see how much we're able to improve on these sets, or see how much the box changes over the season, and also talk through how I approach the rerun, what I prioritize, and how I'm going to be playing this account this season. So to start off, we've played a little under 30 wings so far, and we did pretty well. We played up to C3 with almost no problem, which is I was rank 800 last night when I played, so in like the G2 ranking wise, but again, early season, not as many people are playing, so I wouldn't really consider this against fully G2 players. I really enjoyed these first like week and a half because if you play early and you get lucky and you shoot up, you can actually match against some G3 players or some really good players. And while there's no pressure on because you have plenty of time to climb and to learn your draft throughout the season, it's just a fun time to play against some good people and see either how much you get crushed or if you're able to get some wins off these players. So first, I'm going to show the box. This is what we ruined for the season. Um, I tried to actually keep it pretty small for an account that's going for G1 or anything Guardian Plus. Typically, I see boxes of like 40, 50 units. The rune depth of this account is not very good, and the swift depth is really bad. So I try to be pretty ruthless on what I prioritize and what I runed up so that we can make the best possible core, and get the best chance of competing against other good players. Now, there might be a chance that there's going to be games where I can't reach to a unit that I have. Like, for example, you can see Sonya here. This doesn't really have good enough runes to pick. That Sonya might be the best pick, but I just can't do it because I wanted to condense the runes and put them somewhere else. And I'm okay with that. I think that's going to give me a better win rate overall. So to start off, I'm going to talk through it. They basically broke these units into different priority orders. So I had a first tier that I thought of as units that need to be on your near best sets in order to function, and I'm going to be playing every single game. And for me, those are the units that I have to rune first before anything else. And for this account, that was Lora, Veronica, and Escher. The main reasoning here is that I think that putting Lora on a Vile Will set that is just as fast as you can possibly make. This is literally just the fastest Vile Will set, bar none, that I can make on this account with decent accuracy and decent other substats. Is going to be really crucial because her being this fast with her base speed is going to do two main things for me. One, you're actually going to be able to contest other Swift units if you have a lead advantage. So, like, let's say if I have 33 lead into no lead, like this is definitely going to outspeed like no lead Eschers or things like that. And potentially even outspeeding things like a Fran lead and an Elsharian cleave or some sort of lower speed lead, if you're taking those 33 leads, which I plan to be drafting quite a lot. And then also I'm planning to cheat some of my speed tuning in that my draft is not going to be as fast. My core is not going to be as fast as a lot of the other players are going to be pushing Guardian. And so by having the super fast Lora, she's going to move first. Most of the time we're going to use the skill 3, which is the speed buff. And that's going to allow the rest of my team to move. Hopefully, we'll see how well that works out. But hopefully allow us to kind of cheat the speed tuning there and allow us to play as if we were playing a much faster core. And then lastly, there are a ton of turn 1 units in this meta that are not strip all, but strip 1 buff per hit. So when you think like Moore, when you think Robos, when you think Tian Lang, being able to move first and putting up the buffs out in front of an enemy's Vile core, or like slow Swift core, like again, like Robos can a lot of times be on just like a 300 speed Swift set. And not something crazy like 310, 320, is going to a lot of times also really blunt the impact of the opponent's turn 1 if they end up cutting between Lora and the rest of the team. And then next, the other 2 units were prioritizing my Swift sets, which I actually really wanted to get Veronica on Swift Will. I thought this was really important because she's not that fast, and I do want to be able to pick her into things like Wind Monkey King, like Leo, or other types of units where, again, like that will turn 1 is going to be really useful. Also, I didn't really care about her being the fastest that I could. I just wanted to tune her in front of the Lora, make sure she moved first, make sure that she's fast enough that we're not going to get outsped by like a no lead versus a 33 lead Veronica, uh, and making sure that she's moving in front of any sort of like Vio or Despair cores. So we runed this next, and actually this took some of my best runes. So I have like a 29 speed Wolf rune here, and like some of this 29 speed Swift rune also would actually be part of my Escher set if I wasn't trying to prioritize this Veronica so much. And then lastly, we then took just the best possible Swift set with any stats that we could. On Escher, you can see his stats are terrible. He's actually speed, defense percent, attack percent. And again, this is just what we have for fastest runes. Ideally, we would have him speed, crit rate, HP, but that's just not where the speed of our runes laid. Next, we're going to look at what I'm calling basically my Vio and Despair core. These are units that are tuned very tightly in speed to each other and get kind of the next best sets on everything. The one exception to the tuning is that right now my Moor is pretty significantly faster than everything else. We'll see how I like this in the past. I've really tightly tuned the Moor to the rest of my core. So for example, if you're playing Moor Chung Pung and I have a plus 174 Moor and then my Chung Pung is only plus 161, you're just adding an extra layer of RNG in that you're relying on Moor to both strip and to push back in order for your Chung Pung to move in case the enemy is slightly faster. So for example, if they have like a Wusa that's in between these two in speed, it's very likely that the Moor moves and then the Wusa moves, throws up immunity, and then you have to send in a strip with Chung Pung, where if it was just slightly slower, you'd actually be better off because you could strip after the immunity went up. In this case, I think I'll be using more less of a core draft and more as a really common pick against other turn one teams, just his ability to disrupt and be really good against other turn one players. I think I just favor him having tons of stats and being as fast as possible to get that chance at getting despair stuns or cycling back into other skills. The rest of units that I'm calling my core here, we have Chung Pung, we have Han, we have Oliver, we have Tessa, we have Raccoon, and then we also ruined up Sierra. I haven't played her a lot. We're going to try it out. I basically just needed more speed lead options when we had Oliver, Moore, Vanessa. I don't really like taking Moore with the rest of my box into turn 2 drafts, and so if the enemy took Oliver or took Vanessa, I just really needed to have another speed lead option in case I needed it. So that's the core. I'll walk through the runes just really quickly and talk through what I cared about in building these units. More, I went speed, attack, attack on Despair Will. Click through the runes really quick. In artifacts, ideally we're just looking for additional damage. On the right side here, we actually didn't have any good additional damage artifacts, and we had a gemmed in and add damage with a really high triple S2 accuracy. It's nice because it actually puts him near max AC, but again, we don't really plan on picking more into max res units. But what I really did value is having him fast, having him have some amount of bulk. This is not very tanky, but at least it's not completely paper. And then we have really, really high attack here. So when we're playing turn 1, Douglas is like a really common counter, and making sure that this is a super high attack Moor will just make it so that I can more consistently land that attack break and make it so that's not something that I'm super worried about. Next, we'll look at the Chung Pung, Despair Will. I've historically played a Vio Chung Pung, but we're trying out Despair this season. I think it'll work better with other units that I'm playing. Again, just 85 AC. I think it's speed, HP, accuracy, Despair Will, and then we have some additional damage in Arties. The Han, we actually got it to be pretty tuned to the strippers, which when I first was playing this account, it was like 10 speed slower. It's not as tanky as I would like. It has decently high defense, but we'll try to make this to have just a little bit more bulk throughout the season. And we're just speed, crit damage, attack with add damage, and a little bit of skill 3 accuracy and artifacts. Oliver, we're going with a max res build. I really like this because I just find that when you're taking Oliver into turn 2 stuff, and turn 1 as well, but there's a lot of annoying units that are commonly not built on high res. So things like Wind Monkey King, Minato, Masha, Mei Wang, like all these units that are designed to be really annoying that end up being a lot less impactful when you have resistance. So I really like this build on Oliver. And then we don't have quite max accuracy, but we do have some skill 3 accuracy in artifacts to get it near max. and some minus fire and artifacts. Um, the other unit we showed before was the Sierra. This is just speed, crit rate, HP. It's not quite the stats that I would want to have, but this was like the last unit that I ruined, so we'll see how good she does. And then we made a Max Res Raccoon. It's Vile Will. Ideally, I would build Nem here, but I just didn't have any useful Nem runes. So what I think is pretty interesting here is that when we look at the number of units that I've gone over so far, we actually only have 6 tuned units on Vile and Despair for this core. So we have the Raccoon, the Tessa, the Ciara, the Chung Pung, the Han, and the Oliver, and the Moore, who's a little bit faster, with the Lora just zooming way out in front. Uh, the thing that we're going to try and do is fill out what we need in our draft and what we need to beat the type of drafts that we're going to run into with what I'm going to call either flex picks or low rune economy picks. And I'll go over a couple of those. So one thing that I've done in a couple places on this draft is there are some units that are still very, very functional and are going to do what I need to do without being on Vile or Despair, and we're actually just building Swift on stats. So a really, really common example that you'll see is Vanessa. Vanessa is incredibly hard to rune. If you're going to make what I would say is like the example G3 Vanessa, you really want max accuracy or at least max accuracy with the skill 2 so that you can strip stun on her. You want her to be fairly tanky. Max res is also really common and really cool. You want her to move first because she's a stripper and a setup unit and she only has 101 base speed. And then on top of all that, a lot of people like to build her crit rate as well, so she does some damage. What I ended up going with is, in my comp, there are a lot of very high damage units we're picking, so I didn't feel the need to go crit rate. Rather, I went for a high accuracy resistance build that's tuned to my core and is very tanky. So this is what we end up going with. And we just have some minus LE in artifacts and some skill 2 accuracy in artifacts as well. Hopefully we can get a better artifact there to make this, like if we have like a decent triple, this will get us max accuracy on the Vanessa. We also did the same on Hey Gang. I probably should tune this like a little bit better. This is a little too fast, but Hey Gang is going to be completely useless if it's not tuned in front of your team. Despair is way better, but I just don't have another Despair set that I can give to someone who has to be in front of everything else. The other thing that I'll mention is there are a bunch of units that are really useful at lower speeds, but just need to have efficient runes. So here we have like Mei Hu Wang, who's only plus 109. We have a Fang, who's plus 123. I'd actually like to speed him up if I have the runes, because I think as a defense breaker, it'd be really cool to have him move like in front of Han, for example, with higher accuracy since he awakens into it. Masha is also super easy to build. This isn't quite tuned, but it could be without much work because of her high base speed. Kinky is also very slow, but still usable. This Abellio is complete trash, but it's still in here. I need to rerun this, but it'll do fine with these slow speeds. And yeah, there's a bunch more units like this that are going to be very useful without having high speeds, and you can fill them out with your more efficient but slower runes. Lastly, there are also just a couple of units that take niche sets and don't even need Vile or Despair, such as a Leica and a Douglas on Vampire. We're missing an artifact on Leica, we'll have to replace that. Leo counters, like I have a Belinus rune. This is a really classic Leo counter, where we have low speed, but we have high damage unit who can be really effective into Leo teams since he's built to 0 speed. And then we also have a double Nem Will Daphnis. I wish I had the Fire Cassandra to use instead of this. It's just more consistent with her passive, but we will give this a shot and see how it works. This is mostly for into things like Moore or other AoE strippers that move first. If you have double Nemesis with Will, there's a good chance that if you have super squishy, it can make this unit move and then snipe something from the enemy team. I find this is a little harder to pick now because Vanessa is so meta, but we're actually running damage dealt on fire. We'll see. I'll see if this ends up being used, or if I end up just hoping to pull a Fire Cassandra to use instead. All right, and now that we took a look at the runes in the box that we made, I'm just going to click through a couple of these recent matches to give you an idea of what I'm drafting so far, and then we'll bring back up the box and talk a bit through how we're thinking about the draft and how we're looking to kind of improve upon it as the season goes on. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone that we are basically building our draft around Lora. This is going to be our first pick, and hopefully we just get it every game. If it ends up being first picked against us, I'm sure we'll have to figure something else out and play some other units. Um, but the thing that's been really familiar to me is just playing turn one with her. You saw in a lot of those drafts, we're taking things like Oliver, Laura, taking more into other turn one players, taking Vanessa if that's taken, using our speed threats of Escher and Sekhmet to force speed contests, and then following up with things like Tessa and Han into the more tankier or turn two heavy teams. I think that so far this is working decent, but I don't think is necessarily the most consistent style that I can have with this draft. Something that I'm really looking to lean into and get better at is more mid-range and turn to pivot with this box. I think that there is a lot of power in things like Raccoon with Laura and throwing in the Camilla to have a little bit of sustain. Again, Laura is really, really insane because she's one of the only units in the game that she brings both speed buff and AoE slow. So that can bring a lot of tempo and lead to your team just getting way more turns than the enemy. And bringing a little bit of sustain can just make your comp less proc reliant and less frustrating feeling where if you miss one strip stun or you miss one reset that you feel like you lose the game off of that. And also just make me a little bit less one-dimensional. Again, we are putting a little bit of all of our eggs in one basket with the units that we're ruining, but we do want to have a couple of different paths down our draft that we can go and explore against either different combination of LDs or different combination of units that we see our enemies taking. All right, that's going to be it for this one. Honestly, I'm having a ton of fun on this account, so looking forward to making some more of these, and we'll see you guys in the next one.